Often, we hear the vibrant voices of young Nigerian graduates, brimming with hope as they embark on their National Youth Service Corps (NYSC) journey. A time filled with dreams of contributing to their nation and building a brighter future. Yet for some, these aspirations are overshadowed by a grim and pervasive reality: sexual harassment, threatening the safety, dignity, and potential of countless young people. But amidst this challenge, there are stories of courage and transformation. Today, on Lessons from the Frontlines, we bring you one such story, the powerful account of resilience and reform. It is the story of an individual who chose to stand against this injustice, championing a safer and more equitable environment for generations to come.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Aig-Imoukhuede Foundation podcast. I am Chioma Njoku, the Director of Programs at the Foundation. This episode, titled Lessons from the Frontlines, delves into the challenges and triumphs of public sector reform in Nigeria. Joining us today are two incredible individuals who are driving change in Nigeria. First, we have Mr. Abraham Oludolapo. He's the Assistant Director of Mobilization at the National Youth Service Corps, as we call NYSC, and also an alumnus of the AIG Public Leaders Program, Course 3. During the AIG PLP, participants are required to apply their learnings in real-world settings by initiating and implementing a reform initiative that addresses a critical gap within their ministries, departments, and agencies. As part of his AIG PLP experience, Mr. Oludolapo spearheaded a pioneering reform project within the NYSC, developing a policy document to combat sexual harassment. This initiative has redefined safety standards for corps members across Nigeria. Alongside him, we are very privileged to welcome Ms. Adeola Johnson, a seasoned advocate in the fight against sexual harassment, a public health professional with over a decade of experience in gender, sexual, and reproductive health across diverse audiences. Ms. Adeola Johnson is deeply committed to improving lives by promoting the prevention of gender-based violence and creating access to psychological, medical, and legal support services. She leads the program efforts at the Women at Risk International Foundation, WARIF, a leading Nigerian organization dedicated to combating sexual assault, rape, and human trafficking. Through innovative initiatives, the team empowers survivors by providing them with the critical intervention and treatments they need, whilst raising awareness, addressing immediate health and psychosocial risks, and implementing preventive measures to curb gender-based violence. We are very honored to have our esteemed guests with us today to discuss how these critical issues are being addressed within institutions and across society. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Chioma. Glad to be here.
Thank you, Chioma. It's good to be here.
All right, let's start with Adeola. Your work at WARIF, amongst other things, provides critical support to survivors of sexual assault, while also addressing the broader societal impacts of this issue. Could you share a background to the establishment of the foundation and what inspires your work around sexual harassment in Nigeria?
So, the Women at Risk International Foundation, WARIF, was founded by Dr. Kemida Silva Ibra in 2016. As a consultant of gynae, especially, she started her career at the Ikeja General Hospital, currently now known as the Lagos State University Teaching Hospital, in the gynae department. And while at work, she had seen women and young girls being brought in as a result of sexual abuse, oftentimes not being attended to, being left in the corner, and she started providing her services to these women and girls pro bono. But as time went on, she discovered that there were more and more cases, and this inspired her to start the Women at Risk International Foundation. It started in 2016 in the month of December, and till date, we have seen over 6,000 women and girls coming to our doors to access medical, forensic examination, psychological support, and some being referred for legal as well as shelter or residential services. We have also, the youngest we have seen in our facility is a 7-month-old baby. and the oldest is our grandma in her 60s. At WARIF, what inspires our work is we believe that every woman and girl has a right and deserves to live in a society that is free from rape and sexual violence. No girl needs to be abused for any reason. There's no justification for rape or sexual violence. And that's the WARIF story. Thank you.
And that's the problem worth solving and making very, very big impact already. Just flowing from that insightful response, you've worked in this space now for close to a decade, interfacing with different stakeholder groups. How well have governments, and I mean both federal and state governments, taken the issue of sexual harassment? I mean, we know that Lagos State is a shining example, of zero tolerance to sexual harassment, and it's been advocated not just by NGOs and CSOs, but by the state government. Would you say Lagos state government is an outlier, or is a fight against sexual harassment becoming a priority focus for other governments across the country?
Well, we look at it from the perspective of being heartful. I would say that there's a lot that is going on. There are more than about 36. Out of the 36 states we have in Nigeria, we have about 29 that have signed up the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, which of course, part of its component is of course legal framework that goes against sexual and gender-based violence. Lagos State is doing a lot. Other states are also doing a lot. However, there's room for improvement. Currently, we have the Child Rights Act that about 29 states also in Nigeria have been signatory to. But just like we know, the law being signed is one. The working of the legal framework itself is another. There are a lot of CSOs that work alongside with government. So many partners, some states have response team at the state level, often housed in the Ministry of Justice. We also have states that have sexual assault referral centers, not present in every state in Nigeria, but then it's a good place to start off from. We also have the Child Protection Network, for example, that works with other CSOs as well as alongside with the government in addressing these same issues. And so we are not where we want to be, but we are not where we used to be several years ago. Because even in Lagos State, there's still a lot that still needs to be done. Yes, the Lagos State government is doing very well. We have the response team, we have Office of the Public Defender, for example, that provides legal services. We have empowerment of the police force. But then the idea is that we also have to look at it, that there are also sociocultural norms that drive violence against women and girls. So while the government and CSOs are working in tandem, yes, we're doing a good work across the country. We also still have to ensure that we carry everyone along. Because it's one thing, for example, you have a case, the child gets to a sexual assault referral center, the police is involved, there's a judiciary process in place. And so if all these partners play their role effectively well, then we can see a good result of our collaborative effort. However, if one or two partners do not carry out their responsibility as at when due, then we begin to see a drag, and then you begin to see some hopes being dashed. And I speak about this from a standpoint of experience. The government, yes, is doing a lot. For example, the Federal Ministry of Women Affairs, we have a database that collects about numbers of women who have been harassed. That's a good place to start because you can't plan without numbers. And so we have government actually doing quite a lot, but more still needs to be done because it's a big problem. If we have 1 in 4 girls being sexually harassed, if we have 35% of our women being beaten or being abused financially, mentally, physically by their intimate, that, and then we look at our population size. It's a big problem. However, like I said, a lot has been done, but there's still a room for a lot more improvement.
Thank you, Adeola. In terms of taking Nigeria to where it needs to be, as a public servant, Mr. Abraham, you represent the government, and you've taken on this challenge from within the context of the NYSC. Could you tell us about the problem you identified there and what motivated you to address it?
Well, thank you, Choma. As it has been said, I was privileged to be part of the Aig-Imoukhuede Foundation Public Leaders Program Core 3. And of course, one of the conditions for completion of that program is the capstone project. And by the time we came for the first residential week, I had mapped out 1 or 2 areas I want to work on, which was basically IT based. But on one of the days, we had discussions about sexual harassment, and it veered off to my own organization. As at that time, not too many people in my cohort knew I was working with NYSC. So I kept quiet and I listened to all that people were saying. Oh, when coppers go for service, they harass this. And now, what the NYSC in a single year, as of today, mobilizes over 400,000 Nigerian graduates. And the program is called Mandatory 1 Year Service, which means if you are within the service age, you don't have option. You must do it. The law says you must. Now, you bring people together and they don't have a safe place. They don't have mechanisms for reporting their challenges and all of that. When I returned back to my office, I had to find out if we have any document that speaks to this. I identified that we have a public but not being attended to. That motivated my project to develop a working policy document for the National Youth Service Corps as part of my capstone project. Thank you.
Wow. The NYSC was founded in May 1973. That's over 40 years ago. Long before I was born. Exactly. Are you saying that for this long, young people have been brought together from all parts of the country without a policy to formally address this issue?
Well, see, the point is when you don't identify something as a serious problem, you may not be able to take care of it. We looked into our rule books. There was no specific provision, to say if this happened, this is what you can do. This is the redress mechanism. This is how you can lay your complaints. And that's what motivated the action I took. But we must also realize that as much as NYSC had been there for 52 years, we have other ways by which we deal with issues when they come up. But, procedurally, administratively, there is no provision up till the time I took up the challenge. Thank you.
That's a very major gap you've closed there. Speaking to outcomes and impacts, when was this policy approved? If you can just share with us, and what kind of protective measures does it afford youth corpers and NYSC staff? Finally, if you could also add, what further steps have been taken since its approval to ensure it achieves the impact that you anticipate?
Okay, thank you, Choma. The project itself was approved and adopted as a working document June 2024. And I must thank my Director General, Brigadier Ayodeji, for the support we got. Because from the beginning of the project, he was there giving support. Because, if the arrowhead do not give that kind of support, it's something that can create a problem. So I was able to knock on every door and get it open because I had the Director General support and approval. So after it was approved, the next stage was implementation. So what I did was to write implementation strategies proposed for approval, which I forwarded to the Director General, and graciously he approved again. And so that made it a working document. One of the recommendations I made was that we should have this thing hosted on the NYSC portal, which is accessible for everybody to see. And that has been approved and has been done immediately. Then again is the fact that right from the orientation camp where we gather prospective corps members to begin the 1 year service, there is sensitization, not just for the corps members, but for the entire camp community. And then we have identified desk officers who are our gender desk officers already existing to add it to their schedule so that they can take care of it in every NYSC formation, because we have NYSC in the 30 states and FCT, and then we have zonal offices, 12 of them across the country and the headquarters. So people have been identified to say, okay, this is your job. You have to look into it. And then because the document spells out the process of seeking redress, reporting, and more so, if you are not satisfied by what the system has done, you have the right to take it outside by engaging law enforcement agencies. That must be after you have exhausted the internal mechanism that has been put in place. And since last year, at every orientation camp, there's sensitization, and it's going down, even though there's still much work we intend to do. But for now, that's how much we have come.
Thank you for sharing these steps. And just an additional question before we move on from this. Since its implementation and distribution during the camp meetings and on the website, have you had any people who have come to report cases, because they were able to stumble on this policy document and were able to follow the steps that you've giving them to follow? What impact has it had so far we can share?
Well, we just ended an orientation camp yesterday, and officers are just returning. Probably we'll have some feedback from there. But you see, what we've discovered is that the work space is safer now, saner, because everybody now knows that if you do it, one of the things the document has done is to define what sexual harassment is. It was when I began to study and research on this, I realized that there are things we do carelessly, just innocently, that could constitute sexual harassment. So through the document, people now know that there are boundaries that must not be crossed, because sexual harassment is that which the other person says no to. Once the person, even ordinary touch, a man touching a woman touching a man, is sexual harassment as long as the other person says no to it. And so that enlightenment, that education is there, and it's helping the people. Also, we discovered that people are freer to do their job because they know that they are protected in a way. Also, before this time, if a corps member reports such cases to us, what we do is we remove them from the employer and we blacklist the employer. But now, if an employer does that, we go ahead to apply the rules. The employers are our stakeholders. They are captured in the process. So it's not a matter of, you are an employer, you can do it and get away with it. No. Now you can be prosecuted because the law says so. And these are little things that are happening that has brought about the change. So these people are covered, they are protected. And even the staff strength is above 5,000. So that tells you the enormity of the effect of the policy on the staff and the corps members as a whole.
Thank you, Abraham. I can confirm that I have seen the policy document on the NYSC website. And also thank you for, clarifying the problem. When a problem is not properly defined, then people don't even know that they're breaking a rule in the first place. And I think that Adeola spoke to it in terms of the culture and norms that happen in different societies. Now, Ms. Potts-Johnston, given your active involvement in this sector, could you share your perspective on the importance of institutional policies like this and how they can impact the broader society?
Okay, thank you very much, Chioma. Announce the well done to Mr. Ibrahim. And I would answer this question with one of our interventions that we've had. So under the UN Spotlight project, we had worked with tertiary institutions, 10 of them across 3 geopolitical zones in Nigeria, to have a campus anti-sexual harassment policy and ensure that these policies are working. And so I want to share with you one of the stories from LASSO. In LASSO, when we started our job in LASSO, we went to them about our key activity was to raise awareness on campus, ensure that the school has a policy. The policy is well understood. It is distributed to everyone, and so there is no room for ambiguity. And so when we started the awareness program in LASSO, WARIF had developed a protocol document we distributed to several universities across Nigeria to either adopt or create their own policy, using it as a guideline developed by UNESCO. And in LASSO, the first thing they did that the VC back then did was they developed their institutional policy. So LASSO currently, even if you go to their website, they also have their anti-sexual harassment policy on the website. The second step the institution took was the fact that they now went ahead to have a GNS course. Now, if you've passed through the Nigerian university system, GNS is a compulsory course. It's a 4 units course, and so you must pass. And so what they did was in one of the GNS courses, they imputed issues around prevention and response to sexual and gender-based violence. So there's no student who will pass through the 4 walls of the Lagos State University today that I will say, I've never heard about sexual and gender-based violence. I don't know what it is. I don't know where to get help. It's impossible except because you must pass the course. The next step they did was that they add a portion to both the student handbook, staff handbook, academic, non-academic staff handbook. A portion of it speaks to sexual and gender-based violence. That includes harassment, abuse, violence, sexual exploitation, and all of it. The next step they did, again, was to create a directorate within the same institution, and it has a response team. Now, the beautiful part of the story is that on the response team, you don't have only staff. You have representation of staff and student body. And that was intentionally done. Why? So that students who are being harassed go to report to this panel and sees a fellow student or somebody that is there to protect my interest, in quotes, using the Nigerian, palace language. There's someone who is going to protect my interest on that panel. So I am not facing staff who may want to, protect each other. There's somebody there who represents me. And then if a staff is also being harassed by students, you're not going to a panel where there are only students. There's also staff, on the panel looking at institutional reforms. Because as long as we have just policies in place that talks about it, we also have to put in strategies and processes in place to ensure that the policy works. And that's exactly what LASU has done. So currently in LASU, every student has to have a student handbook. There's a portion of it that speaks to it. If you're a lazy student who will never read your handbook, for example, you have it being taught you in class in your first year and in the first and in the second year. For staff, you have it in your staff handbook, and it is on the institution's website. So everybody has an access to this information. And as I speak to you, we've had, because LASU is a partner with WARIF, we've had students who have, been traumatized in time past, abused before they even came into the institution. They go to the directorate, and then they have counselors, they have social workers who are staff, and some volunteers who we have trained. And when the cases are a little bit, need extra attention, they refer them to WARIF. I worked with a young girl who was abused in secondary school, who shared her story with me, and instantly I had to ask her that, look, this girl has to join the therapy session here at WARIF as a foundation, because the rate at which she was going, she wasn't really progressing in her healing journey. And so I knew she needed much more a trained and a seasoned counselor to handle her case. So having our institutional reforms is important. There must be strategies in place. Just like in Nigeria, fraud there's a rule, there's a policy in Nigeria, there's the law that speaks against that. And then they came up with the whistleblowing issue. And so, that becomes a strategy. If you hear something, or if you say something, always say something. And they will have anonymous platform where people can report to. Because of the society that we live in, we have to ensure that whoever is reporting is protected. And that's where the place of confidentiality now comes in. And so reforms, yes, strategies another, and then policies are also important. Thank you.
Amazing, Adeola. All of our work at the Aig-Imoukhuede Foundation involves varying levels of collaboration with both the federal and state governments. And so we also see the transformative and sustainable effects that can be achieved when we work to support the government. From a perspective and your experience, Adeola, what additional measures could effectively complement these policy-level efforts? You've spoken to us about, your own experience with LASU and WARIF working together. But specifically, what role do you see NGOs, CSOs, and the private sector playing to support the implementation and effectiveness of this NYSC anti-sexual harassment policy? You've spoken to us about WARIF and LASU's collaboration and what impact that's having. But specifically, what role do you see NGOs, CSOs, and the private sector playing to support the implementation and effectiveness of this NYSC's anti-sexual harassment policy?
Okay, thank you very much. So the first thing I will say is CSOs and government can work in the first place to ensure that we have, when it comes to sexual harassment, I would say there should be one, let's have a confidential and anonymous reporting platform. For government in particular, for institutions like the NYSC, because I think your question is shifted towards the NYSC, is that there should be an anonymous platform for anyone to report to. And then we can also work with the government as CSO's partner to ensure advocacy. Why do we keep clamoring advocacy? Because we need institutional reforms, just like we have stated earlier. And so when we have reporting platform, we also ensure that this reporting platform are actually very, very confidential. I can say that because I've worked with young people for a while, and I know that one thing is the protection of their image, their person is very important to them. And then having the understanding also, of course, that over time, has been mistrust between the leaders and the led and the followers. We have to create that also, if we have an anonymous platform that aims to, protect them, and then they're able to build up this trust. Advocacy, because we want institutional reforms. Sensitization program, because it is important, just like Mr. Ibrahim said. We have norms, we have culture, we have things that we do innocently, seemingly innocent, that actually perpetuate violence against women and girls. And I will just use this simple example. In the Yoruba culture, for example, a young lady has to kneel on her, go down on both knees to greet an elder. And so if, for example, my brother-in-law comes to my house and I have a teenage daughter and he's holding her in a way that the young lady is uncomfortable, an average Yoruba woman or an average Nigerian mother will, if they slap the girl or scream down on her, say, greet your uncle properly, what's the problem? Meanwhile, the young man may actually be grooming the girl, or he's already, touching the girl and harassing the young lady, and she's not comfortable with that touch. And so we begin to talk to people about awareness. Let's create more awareness around our norms, our culture, our value as a people that perpetuate violence against women and girls. A woman has four daughters, she doesn't have a son, and then she's being told her children do not have inheritance in their father's house, or their father dies and everything is being given over to an uncle because it is seemingly said that women cannot manage things properly. And if we do not bring about those changes, then sincerely, no matter how much, reforms that we make, even, in terms of legal reforms, if our culture and our norms do not change, it's going to impact badly on the reforms. And I'm saying this based on field experience. It's one thing for the judge to pass, judgments in court. It's another thing for it for the, whoever the judgment is being passed in favor to be able to make some certain decision when he or she goes back home because of cultural norms. Another group of persons that we need to sensitize also are religious and our traditional leaders. Why? Because the way they have great influence, they have great power over people. And so in working with them, it is important that they also begin to understand some of the things that perpetuate, sexual and gender-based violence or violence against women and girls, as we've spoken about. CSOs, private sectors, yes, can we also have workplace harassment policies in our workplaces and ensure that it works? For example, there was a study that was done in Lagos State in the employment sector in Lagos State, and we have about 73.7%, sexual harassment, workplace harassment. We have people who want, when I tell people, they're like, Mr. Ibrahim said, which I like, he said, when people understand what constitutes rape. So, for example, the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act says rape does not just involve forceful penetration. If you have power over me as a superior, and you just tell me that for you to sign my appraisal, I need to have sex with you, and you're not using force, you only just used your power over me, you're not using physical force. If I follow you to a place, it is rape under the Nigerian law, and a lot of people do not even know. So a lot of awareness needs to be done. We have to have workplace policies in place. Institutions also have the same, and we should have anonymous reporting platform. Change our norms as people, begin to bring up values and norms that perpetuate violence, and bring about a shift in attitudinal change. Multi-sectoral approach is also important. Oftentimes, people focus either only on, let's get the woman to the hospital. Let's ensure the young girl is protected. However, we should understand that this young girl, like when we talk to parents in schools, people usually wonder, when you go to the school, you train the girl, why do you want to involve the parent and the school? I would say, well, the girl needs to be safe at home. She needs to be safe in school. She needs to be safe in church. She needs to be safe in the marketplace. And so a multi-sectoral approach is important, because if the driver the downfall driver, for example, Lagos, knows that if I hit a girl on her bum, I will go to jail, and the gateman in her school also understands the same, and her teacher understands the same, and her pastor understands the same, and her neighbor understands the same, and her classmate, who is a boy, also understands the same, that young girl is safe. And so a multi-sectoral approach is important. The legal department, the law enforcement agency, the religious institution, the academic institution, the marketplace, the trade places. We need to have a multi-stakeholder and a multi-sectoral approach in addressing some of these issues as well.
Thank you. A lot of action points for us. Change culture and norms, anonymous reporting platforms, which must be very confidential, multi-stakeholder engagement, and multi-sectoral approach. And when you spoke to, the bus driver, the security people at the gates, it just tied very nicely into the problem you identified of it being a cultural and norm issue. They don't see anything wrong in what they do because nobody has flagged it to them as wrong. They see it as, oh, I'm just kidding, or it's just what we do. So thank you very much for highlighting that. Now, it's clear that this policy has far-reaching impacts, and closing a 5-decade-long gap would have come with these challenges. So tell us, Mr. Abraham, what were the most significant obstacles you encountered in developing this policy, and how were you able to address them?
Well, thank you very much. And I'll talk on 2 or 3. One is the issue of suspicion. Because when I began the work, it was like maybe I'm trying to exhume things that have been buried. Because people know that things had happened in the past. And I had to allay such fears that the intention is not to investigate what has happened. But the intention is to say, okay, let's begin afresh. Let's do what is right. Let's have something in place. And I think that helped me to be able to get some sort of support. Because, when you do what is right or what is bad, you know it. So when the torch is now being pointed at it, there are questions in your heart. So I had to, deal with that. Then is the issue of access. Like I earlier mentioned, the DG gave me approval, but there are people you call gatekeepers in every system that you need to do a back-end consultation. I did a bit of that so that this work can go, because that you have an approval does not mean it will flow easily. So moving from department to units and crisscrossing the entire system, speaking with core members, state officers, state coordinators, it wasn't an easy ride. But ability to manage such complexities helped a bit with the committee I had in place. A challenge that the system is in the face now is that of training. And I'm glad that WARIF is here, Adeola is here. People like our group can be of help in that instance. We intend to have proper training for our desk officers. It's not enough to just give them papers. And coupled with that is they plan to have manuals developed for desk officers, so that a guideline beyond the policy document itself, that is still pending. So one of the things we do in NYSC, even though we are a 21st century organization, is to produce pamphlets like Adeola mentioned about LASU. We always want to do that, but budgetary constraints are not allow us to do that. So we are still looking for ways to put the policy document in small pamphlets that people can be given, stakeholders, core members, staff, so that everybody, it's not every time you go online, open the portal and read what is there. No, if you have a copy, it helps you. These are the challenges. We have managed some are still there. We're looking for support here and there so that we can get this off the ground, and this new year we can drive the process more. And these are our issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing. I identified 2 qualities that you deployed. I would say resilience and effective stakeholder engagement. And you've also put out a call to CSOs, NGOs, and private sector organizations to come partner with the NYSC to ensure that actionable guidelines are produced and handed to these gender desk officers to drive change. So thank you again, Mr. Abraham.
Thank you. It's our pleasure.
So, Ms. Adeola, what message would you like to convey to young people who may be experiencing sexual harassment and do not know what to do?
Okay, so first thing I'll say is I'm sorry that happened to you. Secondly is that it's not your fault. Rape, sexual harassment is never the fault of the survivor. It is and will always be the fault of the perpetrator. Number 3, I will say please seek help. And if you're within Lagos, please visit the WARIF Center. We are located at number 6, 13th Street, off Tobon Avenue, Yaba in Lagos. And we also have a 24-hour toll-free line where you can access help, counseling at no cost to you. Services provided at the WARIF Center at no cost to the survivor. And our toll-free number is 12 digits. It's 0800 9210 0009. It works 24 hours, 7 days a week. Please call the line, and I'm sure there's a counselor at the other end of the line, or there's someone at the other end of the line who is willing to speak with you and walk you through your healing journey. Remember, rape and sexual harassment can never be the fault of the survivor. It will always be the fault of the perpetrator. It's not a result of what you wear. It's not a result of what time of the day you were walking around. It's always the fault of the perpetrator, because you deserve to live in a society that is free from rape and sexual violence. Thank you.
That's a powerful message. Ms. Johnson and Mr. Oludolapo, thank you both for sharing your insights and expertise. Your work is crucial to creating a safer and more equitable society for all of us. One thing I'm taking away from this conversation is that while some problems do resolve themselves, some are systemic and I've add cultural and will remain so until someone rises from among us to solve them. Today's discussion has been both insightful and inspiring, even for me. It's clear that addressing sexual harassment requires a concerted effort from individuals, organizations, and the society at large. Mr. Oludolapo and Ms. Johnson, thank you again for sharing your expertise and stories with us. Your work reminds us that lasting change is possible when we stand together against injustice. To our listeners, thank you for tuning into Lessons from the Frontlines. We hope this episode inspires you to take bold steps towards positive change. A quick hint, the AIG Public Leaders Program will open its call for applications by the end of February, only a few weeks away. If you are a public servant in Africa driven by the passion to lead transformative reforms in your country, I encourage you to apply. The program equips participants with the tools and frameworks to initiate and sustain impactful change, just as Abraham is doing. Be the next change-making, problem-solving public servant. Connect with us on social media to be the first one to know when applications open. Follow us on Twitter or X and Facebook at Aig Foundation. And you can also follow us on LinkedIn and Instagram at Aig-Imoukhuede Foundation. Once again, thank you, Abraham and Adeola, for joining us. To our audience, don't forget to subscribe, share, and let us know your thoughts on this episode. Until next time, take care and let's continue working towards a better future together.